In order to find a paper that I thought would be appropriate for this project, I scanned the globe, the World Wide Web, and everything else in order to hone in on one project that I thought would be perfect. The paper I chose was an empirical study towards understanding user acceptance of Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, in higher education by Cheng, Guan, and Chau, 2016. This project was funded by the University of Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and the reason was they wanted to investigate the use of BYOD at their in-house English Language Center, also known as the ELC. The goals of this study were to explore user acceptance towards using a BYOD approach in an English course at the university level. And what they wanted to do was identify the benefits and concerns of BYOD approach from the perspectives of both students and teachers. The participants were 44 first-year Hong Kong Chinese students, 18 to 21 years old, and they came from a variety of majors, not just English majors, and 2 teachers. And the class that these students were in was the Advanced English for University Students, the AEUS class. This class had specific learning outcomes, or intended learning outcomes. One was to research relevant academic texts for a topic and integrate the sources into a position argument essay appropriately and effectively. The second one was to plan, research for, write, and revise a position argument essay. And the third objective was to present and justify views effectively in a mini oral defense. The activities they used in these classes were based around the analysis of essay structure, citation skills, and referencing skills. And what they did was made use of some in-house e-learning tools and some external websites and collaborative applications that allowed the students to work together. The instruction was learner-centered, and there was a strong emphasis on collaboration and discussion. Furthermore, there were activities for self-reflection, so I thought they took a very constructivist approach to learning and instruction. And now let me go through a sample lesson that was provided in the paper. So here's a sample lesson. You can see it was designed for 60 minutes, and it had 2 objectives of learning citation styles and learning how to quote, paraphrase, and provide a summary. So they had different activity types. You can read here what they are, and they identified them as collaborative or referential or discussion, so you can see there's a lot of collaboration. There's constructive activities, there's reflective activities, and there's a variety of activities, with certain goals that students worked on either alone or in small groups. And finally, the activity ended with an independent and reflective activity that they were supposed to do post-class. For data collection, they based their survey on the work of Schroff, Deneen, and Ng, 2011. Basically, it was a kind of the idea of the TAM, but looking specifically at acceptance of e-portfolios. And their survey looked like this, with different categories for perceived use or perceived ease of use, and based on the different BYOD activities they were doing within their lesson. They had pre and post tests for the survey on a Likert scale, and that was followed up with focus group interviews with both students and then other interviews with the teachers. As for the results of the survey, one of the things I found interesting was that though the number of participants was 44, if we look at the device type in the count, there were 97 different devices used. So I thought that was interesting that the students were not just using one device, they were using multiple devices, even though that was never really discussed in this paper. Another one of the results showed where the students were using the devices, and I didn't find that this question was sufficient because there's no real option to be anywhere but home or at the university. We don't know if they were using these devices at a coffee shop or, at a library or somewhere aside from moving between university and home. In this table, it shows how much students were using their devices and what they were using them for. And based on the one lesson size we saw, or the one lesson sample we saw, it's kind of hard to say what this indicates, because this number of, less than 1 hour a day, well, the lesson was a 60-minute lesson, so most of the lessons seem to be able to be accomplished in class. I don't really know what they were required to do outside of class, so the fact that it was less than an hour a day or more than an hour a day, it's kind of hard to say what was really required for this particular lesson or course. In comparing the pre and post tests, you can see there was very little change among the students that had any statistical significance. The only one was this ATB number 2, which was under the category of attitudes towards BYOD, and this one was being able to use my own device for learning stimulates my interest in the course. And in this case, that interest went down. So as for the teacher interviews, one of the comments I liked was that the teachers felt that the in and out of class learning activities were facilitated by the BYOD. It gave the students a lot more freedom. And of course, they had more independence and the chance to develop a little bit more of a learner autonomy. Students were more familiar and more comfortable with their own devices, so there was, less of a learning curve in trying to perform the activity or accomplish the activity, because they already knew at least how to use the tool that they were going to use. And finally, students were free to decide on the best collaboration tools for them. One of the best comments I thought from the teacher was this one. I don't think BYOD alone can make a difference. The key point is how you design your lesson to facilitate students to develop independent learning and higher order thinking skills with their own devices. These skills are critical to academic advancement. And there was one recommendation in the paper that teachers do need to be trained in how to accomplish this kind of thing of making the devices useful as tools to facilitate learning. As far as the student interviews, the interviewees preferred their own devices because they knew how to use them. And they thought BYOD was a lot easier than going to the library or going somewhere else. And they thought the collaboration was fun and helped them remain engaged as they prepared for their oral defense. But one of the quotes I really liked the best was, let's say I love to use my personal device and I hate mathematics. Even though I'm allowed to use my device in class, I would not concentrate on my study in mathematics. I'm simply not interested in the subject. And that helps explains that one statistically significant result where the perceived interest went down in BYOD. All in all, I thought this was a pretty good implementation of a BYOD program. I thought it allowed for things like learner autonomy, it allowed for collaboration, and as that one teacher's comment indicated, the lesson planning was planned with the devices in mind. The devices weren't just used as content delivery vehicles. So I thought that was well. Where I kind of got lost was, of course, this was just an attitude survey, so we don't know if this particular program actually helped the students with the tasks in this class. Suggestions I would offer to continue with this program were, like suggested, that teacher training should be supplied, but they should also be measuring student outcomes to see if the BYOD program is indeed helping students rather than distracting them in some ways because of the freedom that their own devices also allows them. And as you know by now, I can get pretty pedantic on some of the meanings of these words. So BYOD is in bring your own device. Is that applicable if you're using your device at home? I'm not really sure. But like I highlighted earlier in this presentation, what I really found interesting was that there were 97 different devices used among the 44 students. So that kind of goes into that seamless learning of mixing devices and locations and time to complete assignments and to study and to be engaged with the material that I kind of ended up with my literature review. I'm sorry to go so long, but to paraphrase a great writer, I didn't have time to make it any shorter. Now it's back to work. Thank you for listening.